Just fucking do it. Subscribe now.
The weekend. And and Monday was a bank holiday, so I didn't get out till Tuesday. Well, I'm glad that.
Went nuts in there.
Pardon?
Dying to get out. You're going nuts.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I'm sitting there, and and I had a room with a TV. Private rooms normally always have TV, and so I go to sleep, and I wake up in the morning. There's 4 or 5 guys sitting in my room watching my TV from the main ward, and I wake up and I go, "What the fuck, all these people?" And they say, "Well, we hope you don't mind." And I said, "I do mind." Fuck off.
The normal rooms don't have TVs?
No, they were in wards, big wards, and they'd come from the ward.
That's how it is there.
In the States, no, we have private rooms.
Yeah.
Everybody's got it.
Yeah, but I mean, they were in wards, and so they came. So what's the scam? Where are we?
So we've been talking on the 3 aspects of the acquisition.
Okay.
1 as in financially, does
Yep.
it make sense? And 2 as in culture-wise, does it make sense? And what was the 3rd one?
Financially, culture-wise, but I mean, culture is could be stroke emotional. And the 3rd one, well, back up a second. The Disney board, and even though it's massively dilutive, and nobody knew when the investment banks presented the best case, medium case, worst case scenario, that it was going to be 50 times better than the best case. Because that just doesn't happen. That happens once in a career. And so most people were focusing on the middle case, and I always focus on the worst case. But so they were desperate. Disney was desperate because they were in trouble, and they were in bigger trouble than they were letting on. And of course, they had gotten rid of the one chairman. But the boards look at: do we have to come up with any cash, either through bank conventional loans, and or through our line of credit? And the answer is no. So that's one check. The second thing is if it does work out, how much is it going to impact our top line and bottom line? And again, they had no idea it was going to be successful, but they were betting on jobs. And jobs made magic back in those days. And of course, he struggled, put up 10 million, then 50 million in 10 years, just about 10 years. That's a long time. But they had some successful movies, and at the same time, those were measured against the lack of success for the Disney culture. But there was a lot of ego involved on the Disney side. They invented cartoons. This is their market, or it used to be. But the next thing was some of the board members didn't like the idea, even if it was going to be massively successful, because they were older guys and they had to relearn new tricks. Because if you're going to be on the board of directors of a company that's got this big animation arm now, I mean, and if you're going to stay a board member and you're going to do really your corporate governance like you should, I mean, you're going to have to learn new tricks. So 4 or 5 of the directors weren't either didn't want to learn new tricks, but they did. They had to kind of understand, they had to understand on a much better level what animation really was. And part of the reason, off the record, they knew that their attempts at animation weren't so successful is because the board didn't really give a shit. They gave a shit, but the board members were leaving 1 year, 3 years. I'll be gone with my stock. I'm still getting my honorarium of $250 grand a year, whatever it was. And so they weren't as focused. They didn't have any animated, even though post the acquisition, if I remember, Jobs became the largest shareholder at 7.7% or something like that. But it was just like a cashless seller finance, because when you're swapping shares, it's like seller finance, and even though it's dilutive to the major shareholder, it's not costing anything. All it's costing is monopoly paper, and it made sense. So when people say that there's not seller finance deals out there, that's every time there's a stock for stock swap, it's tantamount to seller finance. And normally, the one that has the biggest shareholder or the biggest shares, meaning the lowest multiple, where their shares are worth the most, wins, and the rest is history. And the rest is history. But the Pixar guys, as I mentioned yesterday, weren't in love with this deal, because they didn't want to be managed by the suits, the professional managers, so to speak, and they made it work. I might have mentioned they separated them from the Disney guys, and but then a lot of the Disney guys, I didn't mention this yesterday. Some of the guys that were part of the movie section would go over to the animation section to learn new shit, because they were cutting edge. They were cutting edge. Now, I probably, even though I wouldn't have done the deal, but I probably, if I was Jobs, I would have bought DreamWorks and sold the package of DreamWorks and Pixar together to Sony or somebody, or pretended to sell to Sony anyway, sure. Because they could have got a higher price, Jobs.
I think in a certain way, sorry to interrupt, Disney thought since things were going bad on their end, if they made the acquisition and things went bad, they had something to blame it on. They just got that acquisition.
Yeah. But I mean, companies
that's what they wanted.
But companies like Disney always have 3 or 4 acquisitions in the pipeline. Always. They just don't announce them. They announce them when they make or they're about to make a material offer. Not when there's an LOI, none of that. They're not announcing LOIs. Otherwise, they'd be announcing LOIs weekly. Because they also know that, not every deal comes to fruition. Maybe 1 in 4, 1 in 3. And it's not because they don't have the money. It's not because they don't have, the brand or the gravitas. It's just that, not all deals come to fruition. And Jobs, rather than squeeze Disney harder, he cut the deal, and he wanted to go back to his baby and make that triumphant entrance, like in one of the Jobs movies he makes, and talking to the guys like he never left. But in those days, until Jobs started to get apparently real sick, I mean, Steve could get anything done, because they go back and they see his successes, and he's not advertising his failures, but that's the one of the premises of the Dream Team. You want people you don't have to explain about that have done a lot of deals, and not to blow my own horn, but I was involved in the biggest healthcare deal in the history of the world, Columbia, through my mentee, Rick Scott, and I personally did the biggest healthcare deal in Europe in the last 20 years in 4 seasons. So, and I know a lot more about healthcare now, 20 years later, but not enough to see the shadows that I do when oil and gas, because I know all the ways to get fucked, and I've been fucked, so I'm hesitant. I've got scar tissue, I got reflexes. And so that's why I rarely look seriously at oil and gas deals for that very reason, because I'm jaded negatively. Even though that's where I made most of my money, I'm still jaded negatively. And whereas in other areas that I'm involved in, I haven't been fucked over so much, so I still can keep a positive attitude. And once you lose that positive attitude, you got to move on, because then you're influencing the rest of the board members. And especially since I'm almost always chairman, if the head boss is not positive about this, it's not going to get done. And they think, well, what does he know that we don't know? And it's because in oil and gas, I know I know just how fragile that market is. But Pixar is a classic case of not a minnow swallowing a whale, but a whale swallowing a minnow, and the minnow turned out to be bigger than the whale, vis-a-vis cash flow. But their results are extraordinary. No, you couldn't find one analyst in the world that predicted, or even came close to predicting, how successful that fucking thing was going to be. I mean, a lot of people like at DreamWorks and at Sony and Fox, they laughed. You know, what are they smoking over there? They made fun of them buying Pixar. And then bringing a psychopath like fucking Jobs, and he was.